After a visit by Vice President Harris, Ghana softens its newer anti-LGBTQ plus bill.
I have raised this issue, and let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
Well, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has said that the substantial elements of a draconian anti-LGBTQ plus bill being considered by Ghana's parliament have been modified after intervention by his government. He made the announcement Monday during a joint press event with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. He pointed out that the proposed legislation, framed in the guise of family values, which seeks to introduce some of the harshest anti-LGBTQ plus laws on the entire African continent, was not legislation introduced by his government, but private members' bill. The bill was first introduced in Parliament in August of 2021. The Ghana president said, quote, "The bill is going through the Parliament. The Attorney General has found it necessary to speak to the committee, the Constitutional and Legal Committee of Parliament, about it regarding the constitutionality of several of the provisions. The Parliament is dealing with it. At the end of the process, I will come in. My understanding is that substantial elements of the bill have already been modified as a result of the intervention of the Attorney General," end quote. Well, good news. Now, let's not cheer for Ghana yet, and we're not going to cheer for Ghana when it's done. But Ghana introduced, in fact, at the end of the show, we're going to last night we heard from Stuart Milk at Diversity Honors as he was talking about what was going on in Ghana, and you could be put to death for being homosexual in Ghana, which is really the focus of what this bill was all about. So we're glad that there is progress. That's what the president is telling us. My other observation is, wow, this is exactly what we want from our government in the United States.
Right.
This is a vice president that is Californian, was a prosecutor in San Francisco, and has stood up for LGBTQ plus rights her entire life. And when she runs for president unsuccessfully, becomes the vice presidential partner of Canada and becomes vice president of the United States, this is how historical-long, history-long, lifelong support of LGBTQ works out, not in this instance for Americans, but for people in Ghana. And this is a representation of why this White House is so important to our LGBTQ community.
You know, this is a good example of American diplomacy. American diplomacy can look at like a bunch of different things. We can use the power of our might, we can use the power of our money, and we can use the power of our morality. This is an opportunity for Americans to look inward and say, what is our morality going to be? Who are we going to be as a country? Do we want to be a leader on human rights, or do we want to be a country that oppresses human rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the arc of history, again, bringing it back to what today is, it's also the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and we have an African-American vice president speaking in an African continent on behalf of the United States.
Yeah.
So it really shows the arc of what our history is, but it also does just remind us that our own LGBTQ plus community is under attack as well, which is very reminiscent of the civil rights movement of the 60s, of coming after and that kind of pushback when there was some progress that was being made. So, you know, we have to kind of just put everything in perspective of where we stand. Yes, our rights are always being attacked, but we're in such a better place than most of the world in many cases.
Well, I know for me, you know, as a trans woman maneuvering through society today, in 2023 can sometimes feel very challenging. So I think about those Ghanaian LGBTQ plus people that are relieved You know, can you imagine being LGBTQ plus in Ghana and this law was going to be passed? What would you do? Where would you go? I mean, I often think about LGBTQ people across the world and whatever they're facing. There was another African country, and I can't remember. Angola. And they had horrific LGBT laws until the human rights, International Human Rights Organization were pleading with them because I think there were a few people that were put to death for being, you know, LGBTQ. So I'm so happy. Thank God she was able to go over and give the message.
Start the conversation.
Yeah.
The governor, I mean, the president is really very specific with going, well, we were doing it anyway, and we're considering it, and we're working on the language. And, that's all initiated. You know, one last thought that I want to make. I want to take a swipe, and so I'm going to take a swipe. The consequences of our elections matter. And in this instance, it doesn't matter to a single person sitting at this table or a single person in South Florida. What matters here is that people got out and voted, and Joe Biden became president of the United States. And he made a commitment to the LGBTQ community, and over the last 2 years has lived up to that commitment in every single way.
Yeah.
Proof of that point. Could you imagine if it was President Ron DeSantis? Would the vice president be in Ghana saying, we think it is repugnant that you are going to execute gay men and lesbian women?
Heck no.
It's impossible to come to that conclusion.
It would never happen.
It never happened. This is the consequence, tangible consequence of our elections. And it doesn't even affect us. But we still stand up for the values of what that election meant.
That's right.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.